Germans Frolovs, you are head of SEO at Simpler QMS, founder of your own SEO consultancy, GF Marketing, and you focus on B2B SaaS, and you're a semantic SEO practitioner, which is what we're going to talk about today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Very, very happy to be here.
Mate, I'm curious how you got into SEO. Like, I know you've learned a lot and you base your work on Koray's framework, but did you learn it like from him initially, or what was your past experience or previous experience with it?
Yeah, I think I started doing SEO in about, was it 2020, 2019? It started all with basically coming to Denmark, learning marketing management, and one of the first internships was in specifically an SEO company where they focused on lead generation. They built lead generation sites and so on. So it was a 6-month long internship, and that's where I started to learn SEO, implement different things, and yeah, that was the starting point. That was, of course, a traditional SEO type of, let's say, framework, and after that, I just started doing different study jobs, also doing digital marketing activities, but also SEO was always there in the repertoire. So that is how I, let's say, started doing SEO. But then Koray's, let's say, framework, and when all that happened was just a few months before Koray launched his course. I first saw the case studies, first videos, and tried reading, I think, one of the first case studies that he launched maybe 5 times, stopped somewhere in the middle every time. But I knew kind of there's probably something special in it. And then once the course launched, immediately bought it and learned about it through the course.
Yeah, that first experience, that first time watching the course or reading it, man, it just blows your mind. Yeah, it's a struggle to communicate this stuff also. Like, this is something that I quite like about you. Like, I've watched some of the videos that you've done online, and you are quite clear and very practical and sort of simple to explain things. You could see he's gotten much better over time too. Like, it's just a thing that over time it comes. I'm also curious, like, when I read some of his case studies and then went through the course and then started applying it, I immediately realized that I sort of adapted things to my own way. So some of them conditioned by what I knew in the past, which I've let some things go and some others have stayed. And that everyone has a slight different thing. Like, I'm interested to see how you've adapted it to the way that you work. You must have your own sort of version of it. Like, what would you say is maybe the biggest thing for you that you use and that you think is most valuable, and what have you sort of not paid that much attention to?
Yeah, I think I started by basically identifying what are the main pillars, what are the process, let's say, or what are the main work streams that I would need to do all the time to implement this as much as possible according to how Koray teaches it, and essentially creating SOPs. Of course, there are going to be some, perhaps, it's not easy to, let's say, implement or SOP the whole thing, because that's not what, let's say, he provides in the course. It's more about the mindset training and understanding of the framework and why we do it. So after you go through the course maybe 5 times, then you start to familiarize yourself with all the terms and understand the process at a high level. The next step was just to start creating SOPs based on the core pillars around the framework. So first version, second version of SOP, and so on, actually doing the work, right? Trying to do it in the real world. That's how I, let's say, implemented it. And the core pillars are essentially the topical map creation, right? And then after that, content brief creation, content writing. Now, additional one that we have been focusing heavily is content configuration. Now, Koray is also introducing some new cool things and is more speaking about visual semantics. That's also something that now we are kind of like SOPing in our own way as well and trying to implement. So I think it's just about identifying what are the main things and then trying to, create a SOP, maybe work instructions, checklists, attaching that to some tools that could speed up some of the things. Essentially doing by practice, and that would be it. I like to, let's say, standardize and make SOPs out of the things a lot, and I think that was very helpful, instead of just, let's say, learning and trying to implement some bits and here and there. Instead, understanding the full process or full framework and then breaking down into processes and then doing the work like that. And that's what I like to do, and probably that's why maybe it becomes easier to implement, of course, but then also explain to other people how to do it once you kind of like dumb it down a little bit from the mindset and theory into practical steps on how to, let's say, follow a certain process.
Yeah. There's a mindset thing that I think is super important. It's very, very valuable because then when you're in doubt, if you go back to that, you can come up with how to do something. So I don't want to sort of play down that part. But at the end of the day, every time that we are doing SEO, we're sitting in front of this page or this thing that we're working on, and we have to make decisions. And that's where like having an SOP and maybe how you make these decisions is just so helpful. So you just not have this overload of stuff in your head. I remember one of the first things that happened to me was I had a way of deciding when I created a new page or not. So I would basically do SERP-based clustering. If I saw that, if two different keywords had very similar results, let's say an overlap of 3 or 4 result URLs that were the same, I was like, okay, it's most likely that I can target these two things on the same page. And usually when that number didn't match, I was like, okay, it seems these are distinct topics, and maybe I'll do better if I have separate pages. This is like this. Sometimes as a coincidence, you get the same results through the framework, but sometimes you don't. And I've heard you say that you changed your mind on it. So maybe you started still using it and then you changed it. So I'm super curious, how was your process? And what's your process before? What was your process before? Was it similar to mine? And how's it now? Like, how are you deciding that?
I would say nowadays still it is very much similar. If there would be one rule, then I would very much follow that rule that you also explained, SERP-based clustering and seeing the overlap. So seeing basically the difference between the two SERPs, right, where you are in doubt. I still utilize SERP-based clustering if I need to just go through, let's say, 20,000 queries and then figure out how many pages do we need there. So that's step number one, but still then line by line, I still double check. And sometimes the clustering breaks, right? And you need to manually actually see the SERPs. There's quite a few, let's say, criteria when it comes to deciding when to create a page and when not. I think Koray calls it also, does the query deserve a page, or QDH, right? And QDP. And QDH is a different one, whether the query deserves a heading, right? Yeah. But essentially, yeah, to simplify it, I would look at the SERPs and then see the similarity. There are a few instances where, like, depending on the authority of your domain, not saying maybe the domain authority, but more like topical authority of the domain and how well it is already covering that niche. I would say the stronger sites don't need that many pages. And typically you would see that over time, the stronger your site gets, the more, let's say, individual pages would start ranking for more queries. So you would naturally see that you need to consolidate more and more pages over time, and then 301 merge, but still keeping that info on the page that you decide to 301 it, let's say 2. But for smaller sites, maybe starting out, it is better in these edge cases, especially, right, to create more pages. Let's say if you have a SERP overlap of 2, maybe sometimes even 3, you might justify creating those 2 pages, comparing the 2 SERPs. Yeah, those are the few rules, but there are quite a few. Like, and depending on the niche, it might be different. So it's like whether the query has enough search volume, right? Whether the index, when you search for something, whether that is a distinct index. If it's not, if it's merged, probably that query doesn't exist at all. So you need to actually find the representative query for which you want to create that. That representative query that represents that topic. But if the index is created and is distinct, then it's a good signal that create a page. And then maybe next question would be, does it have enough search demand, right? And depending on, again, on your niche, if you are in a B2B that has maybe 10 searches a month and it converts at 10%, and that one conversion is worth $1 million a year, then might as well create a page for that. And then there are a few other ones, let's say, of course, the query weight and whether it has rich document vocabulary, and whether you can actually front load and actually add more unique attributes or unique things in that separate content page. If you decide to split them, that could also maybe play a role in deciding whether or not to create a page. But again, coming back to the simplicity, that is still a golden rule that you also mentioned in the beginning, that still works, as long as you just double check and actually verify the source, because sometimes these tools just lie to you. Yeah. I have seen many cases where they show the overlap of, let's say, there's no overlap, so create different ones, but perhaps then when you search those terms yourself using maybe the specific location, specific language, you see that there's quite a bit of overlap. So still always, I would say, verify.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just I can't let it go because it's just so helpful when you have this massive amount of keywords and like new ecom client comes in, they sell whatever. There's a gazillion keywords, and you just want to understand quickly how things are sort of organized, and it's just really helpful. It's because it grabs up
Yeah,
all these things that mean the same thing. Like it
yeah,
gets maybe 80 or 90% right, and then
exactly.
you're going to verify the most important and the most important ones, like the ones you're going to definitely create first. There's usually no mistake there. Where there's usually more issues is, when you go down to the really more specific terms, that's where it gets confused.
Exactly. Yeah. There are a few other like tips, let's say, but yeah, coming back to the criteria, if there's a new entity in the query, right? Or if the query has a template, then perhaps you could actually create more of those pages following the same template. Because there are some systems that are basically predicting if you're using the same query template, and if you're already ranking for them, just continue using the same template. You're probably going to be ranking for more of those similar terms as well with, I think, other pages as well. But yeah,
Yeah. No,
I don't
but
want to talk more about it to not confuse, but
no, but
it
it's
is
fine. It's
quite
interesting.
a interesting topic to delve into.
Yeah, I quite like I quite like this because like there is value going deep because a lot of people know the overview answer, but when you get there and you see this weird thing going on in your search results, that's when you get stuck and you don't know what to do. Like for example,
Yeah.
I was working for this client and the SERP-based clustering was telling me to create 3 different pages, but my client was ranking number 1 and number 2 for all of them. It was like,
Exactly. So why should
right.
you create?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm not doing it, but sometimes I'm on the other side where the competitor that is massive and has been
Mhm.
there forever, they are the ones that with one page rank for everything. But I think my website is sort of weak and I'm not
Yeah.
confident that I can just do one and win it. So like there's always these things, and I'm assuming the answer comes to
It
um,
depends.
it depends, but also about like how powerful your website is. Like there's like how
Yeah.
well do they do in general across the topic. That
Yeah.
tells you a lot.
We
And
discussed
maybe
that. Yeah.
that's yeah, just go on.
Yeah, we just discussed that, right, as well. The context of the website really matters, and also the context of that topic within the whole topical map of your source website, right? If it is an important topic, you might as well cover it. But then again, if it's not important, and maybe there are a few of these outer section, let's say, topics, yeah, and if there's a potential for just creating one page that compares maybe two, right? You can just cover the topic that way. It doesn't, for example, when it comes to in the context of the topical map, it doesn't mean that you need to create a page for every topic. Sometimes, if that topic is not so important for you, you can just cover it as a, let's say, supplementary content area in a more overarching topic. And again, those are the decision trees sometimes that you need to, yeah, or decision points that you need to think about. And yeah, looking at the SERPs as well. Like the other day, I was also checking across, there's a, let's say, one guideline that is an umbrella term for all the guidelines. And within that, there are 10 individual guidelines. And then there are some queries that are comparing one against another one, right? The question is, do we need to create all those versus comparisons now, since we have 10 of them and there are a few queries with versus comparisons, right? Not really. Sometimes you can just have a longer, let's say, three-way comparison and then enter 2 or 3 of those indexes. That way, with one stronger page, especially if you already have individual pages for all of them, right? So sometimes you need to make those kind of like ROI calculations in your mind, whether it's worth creating that page or not in the context of the whole topical map and how important that topic is to bring money to the business.
Mm. Do you did you ever hear about this concept called avalanche theory in SEO?
Yeah.
It's sort of the same as the people also ask
Hmm.
strategy. Like I would group them together as the same thing. It's like you're basically creating this page for a very, very narrow niche, very long tail sort of keyword or phrase or however you want to call it. And you just put those up because they're so niche, they'll usually rank for the exact match. And then those pages start gaining clicks and authority. They start ranking for more keywords, hopefully. And then you have to start merging at some point because you've created just way too many
Exactly.
pages.
Yeah.
The topical map sometimes is sort of it's that the first strategy that we're talking about is more like an accidental strategy where you sort of just put a very niche thing, see what happens, and then
Pray and
adapt
pray.
based on that.
Hmm.
And this other version is a little bit more planned and a little bit more more precise. Like, can you talk to the differences? I don't know if you have experience with the other one or not. But yeah, that's...
Yeah. I think when I was starting out, I also was doing that, like finding low KD keywords, right? And something that is longer tail and then ranking for that and then expanding. I mean, it also works in certain niches, right? But my approach is more like, yeah, more structured, planned, and they're really creating those quality pages. Also nowadays, I'm not too sure about focusing too much on long tail since, yeah, typically if there's a different representative topic, then probably that long tail is going to be actually extracted from one of the passages in your overarching page. So the strategy is more like creating fewer, stronger pages, typically if it's more established website as well, and then covering all the subcontext within that page, unless they deserve a different page. But yeah, well, what can I say? I mean, both work, but there are, let's say, benefits and disadvantages of either option.
Yeah. I always go back to the user, and it's like, sometimes you'll have so many follow-up questions after that very specific question, and then you're sort of on this page and you have nowhere to go. And because that's strategy, like you have all these random things around, you can't even internal link to maybe a relevant other page that the user might want to see. That's where actually covering a topic more comprehensively on one page, and the order and structure it has this, I think, this ultimate benefit. And the reason the other thing still works is just, well, lexical search is still part of the thing. It's not 100% semantic, because that wouldn't work either. So like, yeah, it's always going to work to some degree, but it seems to me like, I have just had more success being a little bit more planned and not just so random.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the stuff that I've heard you talked about, and you're going to do a talk soon about it, is content configuration. People, maybe they don't know what that is, but the simple term is just how you update content after it's published. But it's not just, we're just going to update whatever. Like, there's more process to it. Can you talk to me a little bit more how you do it?
Yeah, it essentially is like you said. It's about publishing. Well, yeah, after you publish the page, you update it. But there are a few reasons why we do it. Essentially, to keep ranking for longer, you must do it. You cannot just create one page and always expect to top rankings if the initial ranking is good. As the biggest problem, I think, is because when we create these strategies, we use some sort of keyword data, right? And all this data is just directional. It's a hypothesis. We are just guessing based on the Ahrefs or SEMrush, the data that we got. We are guessing the main topic. We are guessing the subtopics, maybe by checking the organic keywords of the competitors when creating a content brief or outline, right? And then once we publish, then we start to get actually real GSC data, and then we see what were as close to real as possible, right? We know that they are finding data as well, but at least we got the most precise data that we can get there. And then based on that data, we can actually then reconfigure or update content, restructure the sections, maybe cover some missing gaps, update according to, let's say, the actual search demand and what people are searching, what they deem the most important for the topic. And in the GSC data, yeah, if you pay a little bit more attention and look at the queries and the frequency and the impression count, it basically tells you how essentially you just restructure your article. Whether you need to have, let's say, a definition first, typically yes, but then whether you should have maybe examples or process explanation or types explanation or some kind of other explanation, some kind of other attributes that you must cover in a certain order. Maybe there are some questions that you never thought about, but then users are searching for that, and then also GSC data shows you that. So by including it, you immediately become more relevant to the overall topic and more responsive to that specific question that you might not have answered before. So that's, in a nutshell, the content configuration and why would we do that. But also another reason why we do that, first, we guess, but then also the topics and let's say, the distances between the topics are not static. They are always changing. Sometimes users, new things happen in the world, right? New events happen, then new topics emerge. So if that is within our, let's say, knowledge domain, we should also probably consider covering that. The distances between the topics change. And sometimes also you might see that, let's say, 2 years back for two different topics, you might have had two different pages, but then over time, Google decided to, or maybe users decided to opt for more general topics or more general kind of like search engine result links when they click on those results. And then typically then Google would merge those indexes and then promote certain type of, let's say, topics more. In this case, you would need to consolidate that page, right? And vice versa could happen. Perhaps there is a sub question that is becoming, let's say, more searched over time. Then you might have to split some pages. So that's why this content configuration is quite important. We have showed some nice results for the last about 12 to 14 months, where we reconfigured more than 60% of the content and published, less than 40, and we did get a good rise in traffic just because of that. And every time we do reconfigure or update that content, even though, let's say, it might be ranking number 2, number 1, number 3, after reconfiguration or updating, the average success rate based on the dataset that I was also using for preparing for this upcoming speech was about 88% of the time we get positive results, and we are on average increasing the clicks, let's say 2 weeks after we click update by more than 40%. So it is worthwhile doing to remain on top for the topics that you want to be on top.
Yeah, I'm going to say it like very plainly, and I think updating your existing content in a meaningful way, not just putting an extra paragraph at the top that is whatever automatically generated and change the date. No, that
Date.
not. Yep. But I think at the moment it is probably one of the highest impact things you can do. Like you see results pretty quickly. Is it like that 2-week thing is great to know as a reference, and it's probably the best place to put time if you have a website that has existing content and that you haven't updated it in, I'd say, 12 months or more. How often do you do this update, and how long after you publish a new page do you go in and check to see to tweak that page?
Realistically, with the current resources, it's about every 6 to 9 months. But I know by the textbook, Koray is always saying every 6 months, because what I also heard from him is that Googlebot comes at least 2 times a year to any given page. So the next time it comes, after, let's say, have published or changed the content, it would be very beneficial to see a meaningful positive change in your content quality. Then it's going to come again and again and again. So that's the golden rule would be every 6 months.
Every 6 months. Yeah, that seems. So that applies for existing and new pages. Sort of doesn't matter. Every 6 months you want to be revisiting. And when you're doing this, okay, so now we know when to do it. Now, when you're looking at it, you go to Google Search Console, you load that URL, you see the queries. What are you looking for? Are you sorting by impressions? And then, like, how are you deciding what to actually update?
Yeah, essentially having Google Search Console loaded, sorting by impressions, and then having the content next to on the, let's say, on a split view, and actually seeing then what are the groups of queries with the same meaning in the Google Search Console data, and whether you are covering the same groups of queries with the same meaning in the same order with your content. These are kind of like the first structural decisions you can make. If you see that, okay, I completely did not mention examples, and there are like a bunch of queries, X examples, you must put examples H2 probably, right? And then give a illustration or whatever that example interprets. If you're talking a specific document type, add an image, right? Things like that. And then that would be, let's say, the structural decision point of view that you would do that. Then I would say also going through queries in more detail and seeing whether you have missed any contexts. So once you have done the main structural decisions, sometimes you might see the attribute that means slightly different context that you might not have covered. So you need to probably add a heading or put it in a paragraph, depending on whether the query deserves a heading. The type of decision tree. But after that, you could also look at the competitors, what they have also covered, what kind of context they have been mostly focusing on, and then what kind of engrams they use, what kind of verbs and nouns they use. Perhaps you have missed a very important verb in the context of that topic. And meaning how when people search for certain things, they sometimes use verbs, right? It's one of a very important, let's say, signal, and then might as well be beneficial to add that, let's say, verb and noun construct in your content where it contextually makes sense. So after making structural decisions and seeing what you have missed, and checking the vocabulary of your competitors, and kind of like merging that or reducing that gap between the document vocabulary competitors and yours, you could also, let's say, just always improve quality of the content. Every statement that you make in how Koray teaches, it's all about algorithmic authorship rules and how you write content. I believe you could always make the content better. Basically, saying the same thing with less words and less tokens in, let's say, LLM interpretation.
Yeah.
You could also enrich the content by adding more entities that are contextual to whichever, let's say, section you are processing, adding more entities. You can also add more conceptual connections. If you are doing that continuously, then over time, Google is going to, let's say, learn from you and you are going to become topical authority. And then the whole content configuration pressure shifts on competitors because now Google learns from you and your competitors need to copy you in a way, right? And then classically, you could also do featured snippet optimization, seeing whether the content format is the best one for that type of query, whether a list or a table or an image would be more, let's say, suitable for a specific question. Yeah, I think those are the main steps, I think. And of course, once you have done all those changes, probably you need to update your title tag, summary, intro, things like that.
Yeah. There's probably a before and after in every SEO's journey when they have this happen to them that you realize, oh, now Google is basing stuff on you. Like you actually managed to be the reference. And now you realize I don't have to be copying the other people. Now they have to be copying me because you became the reference. Like it's so cool when it happens. Like, oh
It
yeah.
is. Yeah.
But the first time you're like, oh, this is a thing. Like I remember when it happened to me, and it was quite interesting.
Pretty cool to see. I have seen many cases where like we finally publish this massive guide and then a few months after we see things to know and the PAAs and other SERP features are actually like being created by our content sometimes, where none of the competitors include these sections. We included it, had a massive guide, and then all of a sudden these features appear. So it's very cool to see.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that, for example, that people also ask, they are not always things people ask. They sort of sometimes that they just come from the pages, like from how
From
pages
documents,
are
yeah.
structured, and it's not like I guess some are obviously from people, like for trending stuff, they are from people, but they're definitely not all the time, especially
Yeah,
in certain topics. None of them are probably from people.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'm seeing someone going to Search Console and sorting by impressions and seeing everything and now adding everything in. Like, how do you decide what not to add in?
Yeah, and I would also everything that I just described. It's a huge process, right? Then you'd probably spend one day to do it. So I would also suggest not doing all these things at the same time. Again, if you let's say do the configuration every 6 months, then probably you could just do it by steps. I typically prioritize more structural decisions in the first configuration round. Then next one would be probably improving the content always, but also maybe focusing on a vocabulary gap, let's say a reduction, maybe on knowledge panel or knowledge graph expansion, adding more entities, then maybe also focusing on other like frame semantics. You can also utilize that technique to see what have you missed in that scene, or focusing a little bit more on lemmatization of the words and see what are other, let's say, words within the lemma group you could have also mention in the context of those paragraphs. So I would split it into, let's say, phases and then do certain things in different phases. But to answer your question, I think it's practice, but I would no need to be afraid. Once you see all the data, you can just step by step look and kind of see whether you're covering it. And then you'll get aha moments when you see new queries that you haven't covered yet or new contexts. And I think those are quite easy decisions. Have you covered yes, no, and whether you have covered the things of the same meaning in more or less the same order and in the same heading hierarchy as well. So I think everyone can do that. The first time opening up GSC and trying to follow this kind of approach.
Yeah, you sort of have to trust your brain. Like maybe that's like that. That's just a way to phrase it.
Yeah.
And if what I've done in the past is I also add the average rank, and if you don't have a lot of impressions and you have a terrible average rank, let's say it's over 50 or 60, it's most likely that doesn't go on the page. Like
Yes.
with your brain intuition, like just your intuition on the topic and knowing something about it, and then looking at that, you can probably make a decision more easily. But that's
That's a very
something
good
I've used.
Very good point. If you see that, right, then just Google that topic and probably you will need to create a new page for that whole topic, especially if you don't rank that whole, yeah. It's a
Yeah,
very good point.
that's cool. You talked about, so now we know what to include. We've talked about the order of stuff, but then there's something that maybe we can go a little bit more into, which is, are we creating a heading? Are we adding it within a heading? Like, how are we adding it? Like, where are we adding it? So maybe can you talk a little bit about, query deserves a heading, or how do you decide really how you include these words? You're the SOP guy, you said it. So do you have a way of making that decision?
Yeah, I was working on this finalization of the presentation. I will just pull it up the screen and then I could explain it a little bit more. Yeah, so the first step is essentially checking whether the query is relevant to your, let's say, context. That's step number one, right? If it's not relevant, drop it. If it is relevant, then maybe the next question could be whether you have already an existing heading that covers it. If it is yes, then you can just use that variation as an engram or a sequence of end sequence of same phrases, words. If you haven't covered it already in an existing heading, then maybe checking whether it is whether there's a high similarity of an existing heading. If there's no high similarity, then you can create a new heading and then decide whether it's going to go in H2, H3, H4, H5. If anyone uses H6, maybe also that. And then if the similarity is very high, then you can decide based on the search demand of the query. It is a high similarity with a different, let's say, term, but if it is highly, again, searched, and if the meaning, you can justify it a little bit different, or if it's just a variation of the same thing and you have already covered, of course, you don't need to. But then if it is highly searched, you could add it as a preceding question within that heading section. Basically, preceding question is, you can just add a question in a question and then end with a question mark, and then immediately after that answer that question. But you add that question in just a paragraph tag. You don't need to open up a heading and add that weight to it. And if it is not popular, then you can just add relevant paragraph answering that question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes you can also, what I've done sometimes is very close variation, but you really can't fit in a new heading or something like that, but it seems important. Sometimes you can do like how do you call it? Like just before the heading that's quite similar. On the paragraph before, you end it in a way that you're sort of introducing the next topic with that variation. So then, even though it's just text, but it's super close together, it seems that gives a little boost. Like I've seen it. It's sort of like leading into the next section. You're sort of introducing the next section with that specific term. Only if you just have no other way to get it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like mentioning the next topic in the previous one before leading into it.
Yeah.
I think, of course, and there's also mentions it as an anchor segment. So kind of like mentioning the next thing and then anchoring it to the next one.
Yeah. I don't usually do it like in general, but when I have this case and I just really can't fit it somewhere else, I've tried that and it's sort of worked. Like it's boosted the visibility just for that variation, if you would call it like that.
And to be fair, it's very difficult to do on a continuous basis to follow all those rules, especially like anchor segment. You need to be a little bit creative sometimes to always remain that. And maybe also one thing I learned from this whole, let's say, following the framework, you don't need to be perfect. Like sometimes 70-80% is well than enough, or more than enough to get the benefits. As long as you keep learning, keep improving the processes and systems, and there's only one way forward.
Yeah. Like I think I've talked about this on previous episodes, but for me, I think it was with Pontus Vipelius that we talked about this. Before you did things, and the traditional advice is, this is what you need. Like you need to have entities at whatever. Like they don't tell you how to do things; they just tell you what to do. And the how makes a big difference, because that's where you tap into these specific things that the algorithm might be looking for, or that is looking for, which gives you success over the person who just did it randomly. So it doesn't just give you more tools and things to use. You don't have to use them all at once. That you just can't. There's just too many. But it also helps you really understand how to do things and why you're doing things a little bit better than just before. I thought everything was way more random,
and or follow the checklist, right?
Yeah,
that's also one way. But I totally agree. It's just following the whole framework and starting to implement it. It just raise the understanding of the different things, and then you also realize how much you don't know. over time. And then you become hungry to kind of like, yeah, keep on learning all these things every day. But also, I think some of the rules and some of the, by understanding the how and the underlying reason why you do it, you also sometimes, well, with experience, you realize that sometimes not all the rules must be followed because, again, they depend on the context. And then you're becoming way more, let's say, flexible, but also, yeah, you start to make better decisions in terms of when to follow a certain rule, when not to follow it, depending on the context of the business, the website, the topic, topical map, and so on. Because if you would just follow every single rule that there is, probably you're going to make some mistakes as well over time. Because the whole framework, you can see sometimes contradictions. Like the same case about when to open a page, when not to open a page. It depends on the site, right? So if there would be one rule that, or if you would have not heard that if or else statement, you would probably sometimes make a mistake. So there are different reasons sometimes why you would make a decision.
Yeah, I like to say that as much as we like to look at data and information and be as scientific as possible and do research, there is an art to this thing. It's undeniable, and
Art and
it's the
science.
reason why experience is such a big thing, especially now that everyone's automating everything. Yeah, it just makes a massive difference. But I've seen your videos on creating topical maps and content briefs. I mentioned it before. They're great. I quite enjoyed them. I'm not going to ask you what is a topical map and how to create it or the content brief because we would need a lot of time to just go into that. But maybe you can talk a little about the classic mistakes or stuff that you see that people get wrong about topical maps.
Yeah, in terms of topic maps, I think the first step is those 5 components. The way you choose them, it really sets your whole topical map. The source context, central entity, central search intent, core and outer section, those 5 components. If you pick your central entity wrongly, the most common mistake I see that people are picking it too narrow. And as long as they're creating the, let's say, core section and really part of that is going to be monetizing the website, that's fine. But once they go into the outer section, they're going to miss topics and then probably go a different direction there. So picking the central entity, that is quite important first. Always keeping the source context in mind because basically you are creating a topic and a topical map where you need to connect it to your business in a way. Almost across every single page site-wide. Or you need to connect from maybe really top of the funnel pages, you need to connect to the next page that is going to be closer to your source context and then finally to the one that is going to be to your product page, to your service or something like that. So the link flow needs to flow to the core section. And if you, let's say, don't know what is your source context or forget to reinforce it almost site-wide, that's also another issue. I also see that this whole concept of whether the query deserves a page. So many times pages are created for queries that don't exist because maybe conceptually or somewhere AI told, hey, this topic must exist, but nobody's searching for it. That is a classic, I would say, mistake as well. Seen it too many times, and that's why maybe this whole concept is very, very important to master and understand how the indexes are created. And when looking at it, you might justify create a page, don't create a page. Those would be the main ones, I would say.
Yeah. Now, we are going to have this question even harder because with people now searching with AI tools, they are way more precise in their context and what they need. And even though these things sort of simplify the massive prompt that people give them, they do usually keep one of that specific context, or they try to capture the essence of what they're doing. And if they don't, they will go through that query found out and those documents. And then that answer seems to be always related to the prompt. Like they might use the prompt as the decision making to what they're going to use. So I see this thing where people will start creating a massive amount of pages for all possible contexts, whether they have search demand or not, just because they're trying to get into the AI. Now, from a search point of view, that sounds a little bit suicidal. Like they're going to have issues on search, which then is going to cause them visibility issues in AI anyway.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be this balance, because I've seen websites that state things very, like, let's say a page that has no search demand, but they have it on navigation. They want to explain something important for the customer, like a positioning thing. And that
Yeah.
page will probably receive no organic traffic. But because it's there and it's prominent, when the AI finds the website for whatever reason, it reads it, it sees it, and
Yeah.
then it classifies them as that. So we're going to have to, maybe it's not creating a page, but we're still going to have to find new ways to add these contexts, because these systems work in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think that depends on the navigation queries around the brand. Those ones I would be more inclined to create, not necessarily for SEO reasons, or at least answer those questions that people might have around the brand, those navigation terms. But yeah, you're completely right that if you just go all in AI, SEO, OMO, and any of those 10 acronyms, then you might be shooting yourself in the foot in the traditional search. Yeah, so I think the best solution for now would be, and what we are doing is just augmenting the query more than let's say before, and then yeah, having those questions where the question deserves to be created in a document, or at least providing those answers, disambiguating the main representative query into sub question answers in the content, covering all the, let's say, all the contextual layers and all the context within that, let's say, subtopic on a page segment. I think that is the solution.
Yeah, being more comprehensive to what's really important to your customer, like that your positioning has to be the best it has ever been at the page level, not necessarily you're creating this massive amount of pages for every possible, way they could search.
Mhm. And putting the year in the URL and all those
Yeah.
other tricks that there are.
I want, like, how so the other day I was looking at Search Console for a client, and it's full of these prompt tracking queries. Like, I'm like, they're polluting the information, which is quite annoying. But they all like 2025 and 2024. It's like they don't. It's sort of, they don't use that. I don't know when they're going to start using 2026 more than the other years. It's still like in the past, the thing. But yeah, man, it's quite funny. And I wonder what happens if you have 2026. Are people with 2024 still getting better results because that's how this thing is, like, searching?
As long as you see the query in the Ahrefs data, right?
Yeah.
Then you create that page. No, I'm just joking now, but what am I justifying?
Yeah. What do people mess up with content briefs? Where do they go wrong there?
I think I like the part about content briefs that if you have the data of the queries, let's say you can export from Ahrefs and show any of the tool, then assuming that you're creating the content brief from the scratch, then you can get a lot of data. And the biggest problem I see that sometimes people do not use that data and actually read through the data and then create questions from entity and attribute pairs that they see in the data. Maybe traditionally how we did create outlines is maybe, I don't know, check the competitors, to get all the headings and basically put those headings in your outline, maybe add some more, create a skyscraper. But the unique way of, I'd say, doing the content briefs now that I learned from Koray is looking at the query data and making sure that you answer all those possible generated queries, synthetic queries from the query data that you have. If you are liking data, then you can do, let's say, frame semantic analysis, see what are the main actors, what are the main scenes, or what are the main frames within the scene. I always told it right, but yeah, what is the whole scene and what does it include? What kind of, let's say, elements, and then covering that on a topic level. If you don't have the data, then nowadays LLMs can really help you with that. But it's really about understanding what is the representative query and then augmenting it and seeing what are the most probable attributes and then making sure that you have headings in a proper order for those attributes. And data is going to tell you that first. I think that's the first and biggest mistake. And not looking at the data and just creating random questions with AI. That's the biggest thing. Then maybe throughout the content brief, well, ideally you want to connect it to your source context or to the page that is going to lead to the source context, maybe to reinforce what you are, what you do, and so on. And typically we do it across almost most pages. But yeah, I believe that comes also from the content brief. If that isn't specified there, then probably the writer is also not gonna specify it either. What else? I think after that, it really depends on how you do content briefs. I have seen content briefs from many different people, and some of them might use less words and explanations because they train their authors that way. Some might use more, some might use, let's say, prompts in a question format that the author should actually just answer. Those are the instructions, right? And some might decide to actually explicitly say to the author, explain X, Y, and Z, mention X, Y, and Z. So different ways of doing it, but I think the biggest one is neglecting the data that you might have access to, and then again, following the demand. Because then once you configure, you just have a better data. And again, you need to cover those queries in the proper way. Maybe in addition to the content briefs as well, similarly, it's very helpful to create templates and match patterns of the content briefs, because there are patterns of like, depending on the type of an article, you might already in your head have a predefined template of how you could process that article. It's challenging if it's like a definitive kind of like guide, because then you will have many attributes. But if it's a how-to question requiring steps, there's already predefined best structure and best heading structure, and whether you need to start with a verb, you know, in all the H2s, explaining the steps or instructions in H2s, or maybe it's a versus question or X versus Y topic, then again, you already have a predefined, let's say, pattern or template in your mind. Typically, ideally, everything should be SOP that way, right? So these kind of things help. And if maybe trying to implement the framework and so on, if you are neglecting those patterns or always trying to reinvent something new, that's also probably a mistake.
Yeah, it just makes it harder. Well, I guess that is the biggest pushback on the framework, which is it can feel like a lot of work, and it can feel slightly overwhelming depending on where you're coming from. But again, it's just to what we were saying before, like you don't have to implement everything. You have to, you just get started. As long as you're better than before, you're probably on the right track. And then as you go, you'll start building ways and do things, and you don't have to make 1,000 decisions per page. You'll just make 10 because you've made all the other ones and they're quite similar. So yeah, it's probably more about just getting used to it. On the other side of this is what my experience is. I do see better results. So there is more effort, but I do see better results. So if sometimes you're just getting nowhere with the normal tactics, like if you go into this way of doing things, it's probably the unlock that for that situation. If not, there will be no point in overcomplicating things.
Exactly. And I'm not, let's say, just a fanboy. I have seen results, right? And that's why you start to believe, hey, what I do compared to what I did before, it works, right? And of course, then it is worth that extra effort.
Yeah. You work in a regulated industry. I don't have a lot of experience, like just slightly into those, but not. I don't have a lot of experience like as you on regulated industries. Like what's the challenge there when you've got these additional limitations besides the client itself, which is like, that's one thing that everyone deals with, but now you've got these other regulations.
Yeah, actually, this is my kind of company that I work 9 to 5. That's where I work, and we are in a regulated industry. And we are selling a solution to customers who are also in regulated industries. I think the biggest challenge there is content, let's say quality, not per se from SEO perspective, but also from the actual content quality perspective. We need to find good writers. We need to then educate them about the SEO, let's say, writing rules that we need them to follow, and then really have a good editorial process. That is the biggest challenge. It took more than a few years to assemble the team, to find the right people after trying different approaches. Yeah, I think topical map creation, content brief creation, that's doable. But again, maybe going back to the content brief creation, regulated industries typically are quite complex. Hence, they are also regulated, right? Yeah. To understand and wrap your mind around whole knowledge domain, that takes time. I think before AI, it took me more than a year to understand actually what we are doing. But now, of course, with AI, it's much easier. But still, some topics where you don't have, let's say, industry experience directly, and you are creating content for someone who has direct industry experience of like 10, 15 years, and they might still read your article, you need to work with professionals who have that experience. So in our content writing team, we are only hiring people who have that industry experience. And then we are always asking them for help from the content brief creation process. Also, even now with we recently updated Topical Map, we asked them, hey, please review it. tell us what we are missing, and so on. Then every time we create a brief, we are asking them to see whether there's any attribute that is missing, whether you would reorder some things or reword some things. And then of course the writing begins, and then we have multi-review process where we only have also not just a writer, subject matter expert, but also have a reviewer that is also subject matter expert to fact check all these things. I think the biggest risk is just saying something wrong and then having a company read your thing and implementing like you might have suggested, and then getting penalty from it. If, like in our case, you are dealing in a medical space, God forbid, like actually having someone then develop that device and then someone being hurt because of that, that's the worst thing that can happen. So just, I would say, having extra attention in the words that you put on the paper. Over time, we learned a few things, and hence also had to update many things. But that's how you learn and how you improve the processes. And I think the biggest and best decision was to really focus on hiring people who are subject matter experts. It makes everything much easier.
Yeah, it's like there's really two challenges. It's like your checking has to be really good, but you also need expertise to know what you're talking about. Like it's like, as you said, like AI now helps quite a bit, but there's even times where it's just not enough. Like my experience with regulated industries was this, it's a supplement brand for horses, and they had an Australian store that was quite established, and they had a New Zealand store, and they also had and they were creating a US store. And the challenge they had was that in Australia, they could make claims that they couldn't in the US because the regulation was tighter. So from my point of view, like, I don't know a lot about horses and their health. I also don't know, I can't use the Australian website to base their language and translate that to what's going on in the US, because in the US, there's stuff you can't claim. Because if not, the regulating authority comes to you and they sort of shut you down. The only way around that is with experts willing to work with you to find that balance and also tell you what's important to talk about. Like they know what's important. Like they know the pain points of the customers. They know what's important to talk about, and you have no clue. Like you can try to guess it with AI and stuff like that, but they are the ones that really know, and then you have to sort of orchestrate how to actually go about it. But it's hard. It's hard.
That's also why I think I had a slide in one of the webinars about content brief creation. That like we get the data as SEOs, we can construct the perfect outline based on the data that we have, but then you need that expertise. That's why we always ask for advice from the author before writing begins about the content brief itself. When you merge those two things, data plus the expertise, then that's where the best quality outputs are being produced.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just another quick example. Like the other day, like I work with this. It's an electrical distributor client. They've got 100,000 products or something, and they are electrical parts. So when you buy something, that thing is made of parts, and they sell the parts. So you're not going to know anything about these electrical components of things. And we're trying to fix their taxonomy, so the way they organize their category pages, so then people can find the products better. And the only way that we had to go about it was use AI and keyword research and try to come up with a way of organizing them. And for one of the product ranges, we sent the thing in, and it was, we just need better names for the existing categories of the website. You know, we already have some. Let's name them properly and not just be something that's non-descriptive.
Yeah.
Or they are conjoined categories and they should be separate, things like that.
Yeah.
And the expert that was in charge of those products, he was like, this is all wrong. And I'm like, but this is what you have live. You know, have you realized that? And it's like, yes, I just hate it. It's wrong. And we had this back and forth, and we ended up creating a taxonomy based on his expertise and how he thinks products were organized. And when we redid the process with his guidance, we ended up with something so much better. We found stuff we had missed that was quite important, and we were able to merge it with what we had before. So we ended up with this just so much better result. And hopefully we'll see a benefit when it's published. It's sort of in the making, but an expert could change completely how you go into things. You just have no clue what you don't know. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And also, that's also an addition of human effort, right? And having that human effort also, let's say, shown in the content, expert naturally is going to add probably more examples, use expert language that AI might miss, and so on. It just makes the content so much better. But I just wanted to mention towards that example that you also recently shared is that sometimes the query semantics and the language that people use to search sometimes is, well, sounding weird to an expert. Once we have the data, hey, you sometimes need to create page for this and this topic, but these topics are the same. Sorry, but there are different groups of people that are searching for the same things in different terms. And sometimes we need to, and Google also is not smart enough, right, to, let's say, sometimes consolidate those two topics. Although they mean the same thing. I had more than 10 or 20 scenarios where we had to do it. And then expert says, why the heck would you do that? But like showing the data, the SERPs, trust me, we're going to benefit from it. And we did it, right? But sometimes you need to make those decisions.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Last night I had a conversation with a client just precisely about that. People search for the same thing in different ways. Like that is my phrase. That's just, it's a reality and you got to stick with it. There's no way around it. You're quite into fitness and you have this personal project of yours. You created a website around it. It seems you have an app. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Like what's worked, what hasn't, how different is it working like with this blank thing where there's no client that needs to approve anything? It's just you and the budget that you have for it, like in time or money, whatever it is. Like how's that?
Yeah. Actually, yes, I started it. I think I launched it like beginning of last year, but to be completely honest, I haven't touched it for since then. I launched it, but I got super busy with client work on top of the full-time job. But I had very high ambitions for it. But I kind of like every month think, should I just assemble a team and get started at it again? But initially, I also kind of like made it as an experiment, following everything, let's say, from the framework to the T as much as I know. And I believe I published about 29, 30 pages. It was all about workout routine templates, and just published them. Did nothing else. No social media posting, no ads, no links, nothing, just content. And it proved the point that initial rankings were not there. It was a fresh domain. But then after 3 months, it started to pick up and I was getting about 300 clicks a day at the peak. So just 20, 30 pages publish and I was ranking, the main term was workout template. I was ranking just below Pure Gym, just below Canva. So it worked, but then due to no brand search demand, no real social media activity, no business behind it, I think it was December last year when after 300 clicks a day, it just went down to maybe like 20, 30 now. But it was a good learning experience, saying that what you should do, what you should not do, what I was lacking, and so on. So ideally, if I would launch it again, I would really focus on social media, really focus on also paid ads, creating actual user, like branded search demand, having an application behind it, not just offering freebies. Although those freebies got me more than 50,000 email subscribers. So that helped, but at the end of the day, doing it properly would require a lot more time and effort. Let's see, maybe I'll relaunch it or maybe try to revive that project. I believe I also had a few YouTube videos that were still bringing some visitors to that website and still are bringing, but that was the only thing that was there. A little bit of YouTube videos and just content. But with that amount of subscribers, maybe there's a potential to launch something.
Yeah, no, but it's cool. It's a great example for business owners to understand, like, you have to build a business. Like you can't just build a website. Like, or just building a website isn't building a business. Building a real business means you're doing other things, and Google is just getting way better at that. Like it's just using different signals to sort of think. Yeah, and if you have like a really low volume thing, I think you stay under the radar of those algorithms. But when you're more popular, it seems that's when they kick in and that's when they catch you. If you were like, if this was like this more, maybe a B2B site where like very low volume, stuff like that, maybe you could get away with more. Like you wouldn't lose maybe that amount of traffic just because it seems how many people are exposed to the website that is brandless, has
Yeah.
a lot to do the when that thing kicks in or not.
Exactly. Yeah. There's also different types of algorithms that are kicking in. First of all, when website gets launched, right? There are cheap algorithms that are assessing the website first, and then once the user data is being historical data is being accumulated, then other also algorithms come in, assess the content, look at the user data, and then that's where typically you would see something was launched with AI, whatever, got 1 million clicks a month, and after 3 months it goes down, right?
Yeah.
But luckily I had a much longer runway than 3 months. But yeah, that website didn't have the business behind it. It didn't have a function that type of what this website should have. So it's having a source context, right? Step number one, the topical map creation. And unfortunately, that wasn't good enough, and the website didn't provide the best function it should have provided in that case.
Yeah, and it's a high volume competitive industry. Like it's not an easy thing, but cool exercise. I don't think you can have a podcast about anything digital marketing without talking about AI. How are you using it? How are you using it? Like what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Since the day it was launched, of course, we have been using it, starting with ChatGPT and then ending up with 30 plus custom GPTs for different types of things. So I think that was the case for the last year or so. We basically have everything SOP'd, and then with every SOP we have some GPTs attached to it. When you would use one or the other, depending on the process that you do. Now what we are trying to do is, like most of the industry, move to cloud. This is what we're trying to do now. Just recently, we created quite a few good systems. Shout out to my colleague from the community as well, Tejendra Chauhan. I found him from the cohort community. Now we are working together. We're very much like-minded people. So now I encourage him to jump to AI systems. And now we really see there is a very good opportunity to build something by following the framework, let's say step by step, while still preserving the quality in the outputs. Before we were quite skeptical, because we are used to doing it manually with some AI assistants, with some custom GPTs. But now we see with the introduction of Cloud Code and now the capabilities that Cloud provides for the last few months, it's very possible to streamline even more things, while of course not having a one-click solution, but still cutting down the time on, let's say, content brief creation by a considerable amount. So that's mostly what we are doing. And now the next step is just to, again, according to those pillars of the whole framework, we are trying to streamline each let's say pillar and see where we could create some skills, multi-agent systems, and so on. Always having a human in the loop. Let's say midway through the process, we will jump in, adjust a few things before the system can continue running. So this is mostly the focus now.
Yeah, breaking it down and checking it in between. Like not just breaking it down because of the context window, breaking it down because you want to check it in between makes a massive difference in the final output. And what I've seen is also if what you mentioned, like we have SOPs, so we can tell it what to do, like it's got a reference. When you give it a framework, like a mental model, something that it can use to base its decisions, it works so much better than if you just say, do this, because I don't know how it just decides. Like it doesn't have a way of deciding, but if you give it a way of deciding, it's just so much better. And Claude probably made the difference in the sense that it's just more reliable. It sort of does way more what you tell it to do. And it's like two outputs, 2 times doing the same thing creates similar results compared to GPT, where it was like, man, I did this great thing, but I'm never able to replicate it again.
Yeah, exactly. That also brings to not just procedures and context, but also a bunch of examples, right? What does the good look like? And that is essentially following all the prompting best practices, right? A few shot and perhaps chain type of reasoning and good SOPs put into an AI. If you put good processes in and good context in, you'll have good out of it. And especially nowadays, I think that's the biggest opportunity. If you have structured processes, start using those systems. There are going to be crazy efficiency gains. If you don't have the processes, start there instead of just jumping on any AI system, thinking that's going to solve the puzzle or help you automate things. So everything starts from there.
Yeah. And I would also say that it might be helpful to, for example, if you can get, like, let's say you have your SOPs and you create your skills and your things and then you sell them. Like someone who buys that would benefit. but you still have to play around with them, and then they're never usually 100% ready to go. Like you
Yeah.
have to play around and then adapt them to your specific case. That there isn't this like one click thing. Like I don't know if it's possible to get there.
I think we all got burned with the, hey, I built a 100 node N8 workflow post type on LinkedIn, comment below, I'll send it to you. You got it. You're all excited, but it doesn't work. So it's if it sounds good, probably it's not going to be true. But yeah, you're right that you need to understand the inner workings of the system. It's very hard to copy paste. Maybe you can get inspirations from many of those templates in N8N or Cloud Code skills that you get. Unless it's a very simple social media automation system, right? In the N8N, you just swap the APIs and whatnot, and then ready to go. But still, probably it's going to be your brand. You need to adjust the prompts on how those posts will be created and so on. So for sure, we sometimes look into templates and so on just for inspiration of and maybe learning how the system works, but not just by copy pasting, because we do, let's say, different things. Each company does different things slightly.
No, there's a huge advantage of like buying a course, buying something someone has put together and selling. Like you are gaining time that someone put time into it, and you're gaining that. You're accelerating. It doesn't mean you're ready to just plug and go and that's it.
Exactly.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about AI is we're moving way more from, well, it's been a while, but it's getting more prominent all the time. We are moving from page level performance to sort of like answer or like section, passage
Yes.
level. It's just like it started with featured snippets maybe, but now it's just gone full blown because now the whole thing is sort of about that. Like everything new about AI just seems to be around that. Are you doing anything special to work on that? Any tests? Any things you already do? Like what's going on there?
I think I got a little bit lucky that by, again, following the framework, it's kind of already taught that to focus on the passages and the passage extraction. And you gotta do that mainly by following some of the algorithmic authorship rules about how actually the question is answered immediately after the question, the subordinate text, or let's say, the immediate first sentence after the question. Also, what type of format of an answer we provide. If the question requires you to put a list, you need to put a list. Maybe sometimes, if there's a difference, sometimes maybe it requires a list, maybe sometimes it requires a paragraph, then you can actually already give a slight answer in a paragraph and the list definition before the list. So I think for that, you're, following the, let's say, writing content for algorithmic quality so that they can understand what you write, right? And what you're saying, that has been helping the most in winning feature snippets, in appearing in AI overviews and being extractable. But of course, first and foremost, your documents need to rank. After that, your passages need to be relevant and responsive. And then you will have a chance of being extracted and cited and served maybe in those answer engines.
Yeah. Like I'm quite grateful for having gone through the course when I did and started implementing stuff right away, because now I have old clients that are quite happy because they see visibility right away, and it's because I don't remember when Koray's course was launched. Maybe it was 2022 or something like that, or 2021. I don't know. But whenever it was, like that's the first thing that I started implementing and being very conscious of is just no fluff, answer right away. And it's such a big impact, and it's sort of sustained over time. It's like now everyone's talking about it like the new thing, and I'm like, oh, man, this has been a thing for like a long time now. But
Exactly. Chunking
sure,
and NLP language, all that stuff, right?
yeah,
Structured content, yeah. But it's also one of the easiest ways to implement, right? In the whole framework. You don't need to, if you already have an existing website, good luck creating a new topical map and publishing everything from the beginning, right? Or starting to delete stuff. I think the easiest way to get started is through that, right? So making teeny tiny changes and optimizing the content that you already have. And then over time, reconfiguring the section of the website, publishing a new section of the website, and reconfiguring the whole semantic content network, and then having that topical and developed over time.
one of the things that I'm thinking is because these systems seem to be just way more focused on the actual passage, right? Are we going to have to repeat the main entity, sort of what the page is about, more at the passage level than before, because these things can maybe take it from this singular passage? Or do you think this things is sort of remembering just because, oh, we're on a page about this, and it can sort of match that passage with the main entity? I still haven't figured out, and it's a test that I want to do. I'm not sure how easy it is to actually get it right without polluting the results. Like, are we going to have to increase the presence of the main entity across the document for this reason?
I think entity segment is a thing, but it depends on the question that you want to be cited for. But typically, if you write about X, then probably almost in every single heading you're going to have a mention of X. And it's in as if I understood the question right, I would say that it is just about matching the question directly with the answer, basically repeating the same thing and giving an answer. That would make you the most relevant and hopefully also then responsive to the question that there is. Responsiveness can also mean slightly different thing in the traditional way, the function of the website, right? If there's a query that requires some kind of calculator to be embedded as a tool, that could also be related to responsiveness. But related to AI citations, I think one of the simplest and best or most effective ways would be to match the question with the answer directly, and then giving that answer if you're talking about just textual semantics only.
Yeah, that makes sense. Last question. When I talked to Luis, he said like this crazy thing that he was asking people in the gym and stuff for opinions about, like, he was working on this jewelry website, and he was like, I'll just go ask this woman that's here, that, like, this woman that's here in the gym, like, what's going on with jewelry. Now, he may have other intentions too, but he was sort of asking people. You basically, you sort of moved your way into SEO. So you got to see different marketing channels. You got like maybe some customer experience along the way, like for the business you're working. Like, how did that change the way that you look at what you do for SEO now? Like, do you think that sort of like experience with direct customer experience has helped you?
For sure. I don't think I had, apart from some interviews that I did with some customers in case studies, I think it definitely helps by understanding the customers. I know what you're referring to also in Lewis's situation, putting yourself in the customer's shoes, asking a woman, imagine that you're a woman. I saw James made a funny post about him a few months back. That was funny. But I'm quite grateful for my experience with starting with kind of like being a sales and marketing assistant by understanding the sales side, and then overarching like different digital marketing channels, from PPC to email marketing to how to make a website, how to design a few things on the website, to how to do sales outreach, right? By having that holistic understanding of marketing, I think you can also not keep isolated yourself only in SEO technical decisions, and then you can actually support the whole organization with your SEO insights as well. And then maybe when other marketing teams or product teams or other teams within the company also maybe sometimes are proposing something to do on the website, you might think from the SEO type of, let's say, mindset only. But if you also understand their, let's say, direction and why they want to do it, you might actually suggest a better solution. Basically, all that said, I think with that experience coming from digital marketing, it helps me make better decisions in SEO, but also how can I frame this better? Also think from the business perspective more other than just technical and SEO and search volumes. That's how I would, let's say, frame it.
Yeah, that's good. If people want to find out about you, know more about you, hire you for your consultancy in B2B SaaS, where should they go?
I think they could just Google my name, Germans Frolovs, and find my personal website, my LinkedIn. I think I also have a company website, but basically reach out to LinkedIn. I think that is the most direct way to get in touch with me.
Cool. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.